Can I pass on my condolences to Tom Burke's friends and family? Tom was a bright presence outside the gates of Leinster House, and just a very, very nice person, and he'll be sadly missed here, although more so obviously by his family and friends. Taoiseach, or Taoiseach, co-Taoiseach, people before profit are not late converts to questioning the 12.5% corporate tax rate. We have done so from the very beginning. And really the question I want to ask you is, how do you morally justify the fact that the government for months and months and months now has put and continues to put enormous energy and resources, and seems to be willing to die in a ditch, in effect, to prevent international efforts to have a minimal increase on the absolutely staggering profits of some of the largest and wealthiest corporations in the world, and make them pay just a little bit more tax. Corporations we know are involved in aggressive tax avoidance, and who don't in fact even pay anything close to the 12.5% rate, but in fact pay about 5.5% in reality collectively, and some of them pay a lot less. Why do you think it's okay to try and prevent a little bit of tax extra being imposed on these staggeringly profitable corporations, but you will do nothing? In fact, you trenchantly oppose efforts to reduce the tax burden on ordinary working people in this country, as you did last night when we pleaded with you not to impose a further tax hike through carbon taxes on ordinary working people in this country. Some of whom, when we're talking about the elderly, the vulnerable and the sick, will have to make choices between food and heating their homes after the raft of energy price hikes, and now you're proposing to worsen that situation by imposing carbon tax hikes in the budgets. I mean, do you think Jeff Bezos is going to be worried about whether he should heat his home or have food? No, these people are making absolutely billions. Or how do you think it is morally justifiable that workers in this country pay a minimum of 20% tax on their income, but you don't think it's acceptable that corporations would pay the same amount in tax? I mean, do you know, for example, that workers paid 130 billion euro, earned 130 billion euros last year, and they paid 27 billion euro in tax. Corporations earned 200 billion and paid 11 billion euro in tax. In other words, workers paid 20% on average in tax, and corporations paid 5%. Why do you defend the corporations instead of looking after working people?
Thanks, Deputy. I believe that taxes should be low, simple and fair, and that goes for workers and companies. I'm not sure if you believe they should be low, simple and fair, perhaps simple and fair but not low. And I believe that should apply to companies and to workers alike, and I hope when it comes to budget day you will vote in favour of things like tax indexation, for example, where we raise the credits and raise the bands so that people are protected from the effect of inflation on their pay packets. Our position is one of defending our national interest. 250,000 people work in multinational companies in Ireland, and that spins off maybe another 100,000 jobs or so. That's 350,000 jobs. We want to retain those jobs in Ireland, and we want more of them all over the country. And we want to protect our revenue base. We take in between 10 and 12 billion a year in corporation profit tax, double what the average European country does on a per head basis, precisely because we have a low tax rate. Because in the world that we live in the modern world, labour, capital, investment, money, all those things are internationally mobile. And if your taxes are too high, they leave. If your taxes are low, it comes in. That's why the 12.5% rate has worked so well for Ireland. And that's what this is about for us, trying to protect jobs and protect our revenue stream. That 10 or 12 billion we take in every year from corporations is roughly the cost of running our entire education system. It's that large amount of money, and we want to retain that coming in. And I know this can be characterised in a very simple way as corporations not paying their fair share of tax, and they should pay their fair share of tax, whether it's here or somewhere else. But in reality, these negotiations have been about other things. They've been about larger countries trying to get a bigger share of the pie and taking that share of the pie off us. It hasn't been about ensuring that countries in the developing world get a fairer share of the taxation. It's been about larger countries, big countries, wealthy countries, who think that we're getting too much and they want to take some of that off us. And that's what we had to protect and push back against.
Yeah, Taoiseach, I think that's scare tactics in order to justify the pitifully low levels of tax that these corporations are asked to pay. As even the Chamber of Commerce, the US Chamber of Commerce has said, and representatives of many of these multinationals have said the reasons they are here are not primarily or exclusively the tax rate. It's to do with the fact that we're English speaking, we're within the European market, we have an educated workforce, and we used to have, but not now because of the lack of public investment, a decent water infrastructure and a proper energy infrastructure. And you'd be doing far better collecting some taxes off these corporations at a reasonable rate, comparable with what ordinary workers pay, in order to actually fund the investment in education, higher education, water, energy infrastructure, and all of the things that actually can sustain investment and develop the economy over the meanwhile. But what I asked you, Taoiseach, is, or Taoiseach, how do you think it is justified to try and minimise international efforts now to make these corporations pay a little bit more tax, and you put huge energy into it, but you think it's okay to whack a carbon tax on the elderly, the sick and the vulnerable, some of whom will suffer needless death this winter because of the cold and because of these energy and carbon tax price hikes, or that ordinary workers in this country pay 3 times the proportion of their income that these corporations pay.
Deputy, we're way over time. To respond.
Thanks, Deputy. The reality of these negotiations, and I've been following them closely for a long time now, is not the way you present them or see them. We have large countries, wealthy countries, looking for more revenues, and they want to take them off smaller countries like ours. The United Kingdom in the negotiations made sure that the City of London was protected and would not see some of these applications applied to it. Some countries had their R&D tax credit system protected, and the US. The US ensured that the EU dropped its digital tax proposals. That's the reality of what's been happening here. And as a small country that relies a lot on multinational investment, we had to protect our interest, seek guarantees, seek protections, and we did exactly that, and that's what any right-thinking government should do. I agree with you on one point. The offering for multinationals is and always has been about more than tax. It's about talent, it's about infrastructure, it's about access to the European single market and the Eurozone, which I think you're opposed to. It's about commitment to free trade, which I think you're also opposed to. But again, let's not forget one thing. Let's not forget one thing. The estimates, not from me, but from the Department of Finance, is that increasing corporation profit tax in Ireland will result in a reduction in revenues. That is because investment, capital and wealth are mobile in the international world that we live in.